Yep, no problem.
Awesome. So just to kick it off, Connor, I know we were chatting a little bit before this, but um, you have done quite a bit on the real estate side as well as the business side. But would you like to give a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I started actually as a chiropractor, grew up in Canada, moved to the US, became a chiropractor and practiced for a couple years
Okay.
and realized that it's hard trading time for dollars. Doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, right? It's very hard to
Yeah.
trade time for dollars, especially when you're in a very specific field where you need a license. So that turned into a little bit of entrepreneurship, a little bit of consulting, software company, marketing company, and then started learning the internet marketing game and
Okay.
started getting good there. Then started making money and thought, okay, well, I got to put the money somewhere. So real estate was the vehicle. At the time, the guys who I started with, they were interested in short-term rentals, Airbnb. So the first jump into the real estate space was short-term rentals. Bought a bunch of those, then built a management company around it. And as we are just talking about, we just exited our property management company 6 weeks ago at this point. So we built it and sold it at this point.
So what was your first entrepreneurial venture going out of being a chiropractor? And
Yeah,
what made you want to take kind of that jump?
Yeah. So even before the chiropractic thing, I mean, when you become a chiropractor, you typically do 4 years undergraduate or college, then you do a graduate study, and that lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on if you take summers off or not. Before that, I was big in home services. I ran a couple painting companies
Okay.
while I was going through college, and kind of learned like people, right? How to run people properly, how to run a team properly, how to
Yeah.
compensate people, and learn some of that skills. But after the chiropractic thing, I got to be a employee basically for a bit when I was an associate, and that learned taught me how to like be an employee, good or bad.
Yeah.
So then that transitioned into marketing, and I think marketing is honestly the best type of company to try to run if you're starting something new, just
Okay.
because it costs you nothing to start. It's so like you can get a laptop for $1,000. And you can almost all the information's free on YouTube. So like
Okay.
that's literally the lowest barrier to get in. So that's where we started.
Now, when you say a marketing company, I feel like people kind of talk about it in a couple different senses. Like, what was a typical service offering that you guys had for a
Yeah.
business?
So there's a couple different companies. There was the organic traffic company, then the paid media company. So paid media would be things like lead generation for physicians, where you're running a Facebook ad, video or picture, captures a lead. That lead goes to the physician's office, whether it's a med spa or chiropractor, whatever it is, gives
Yeah.
the lead, and you charge a retainer for that service. So anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a month,
Okay.
plus the ad spend to deliver paid traffic. On the organic side, we also ran a lot of B2B marketing, which was a mix of email and LinkedIn marketing, right? Where it's like, hey, we got a product or a service for another business, and we're doing that outbound marketing as opposed to the paid media inbound marketing.
Okay. Now, I remember years and years ago, I joined the Ty Lopez
Yeah.
social media marketing thing. I didn't end up doing anything with it, but what I found over and over is there's these people trying to start marketing companies, but they never seem to figure out how to get their own first client. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that. He goes even deeper than that because the Ty Lopez thing was, here's my Lamborghini or whatever he had, or Ferrari or whatever was
Yeah.
in his garage, right? And everyone's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. Like that's a perfect example of good marketing because it's got a high virality score, right? People actually want to look at it, and he became very successful. On the digital marketing side, when we started the company, it was all outbound marketing. And so it started with referrals, right? Like the first few clients were referrals. Hey, I know a guy who
Right.
knows a guy, right? And we were doing some consulting. So we were picking up these clients. And then actually the first probably 30, maybe 40 clients came from trade shows. So we were doing
Okay.
marketing and consulting for a product. And then we'd go booth to booth, right? Let's say there's 400 of these setups. And we would say, hey, we represent booth 284, and we could do the same thing for you guys, but on the digital space. Are you interested? And we basically pick up all the vendor cards and call all
Okay.
the vendors. So it's kind of like guerrilla marketing, right? Very, very
Yeah.
raw style marketing. On the paid media side, when you're doing Facebook ads and stuff, a lot of that traffic came from paid media. We'd run
Right.
paid media. Hey, if you're a physician and want to get more patients, we can help you. Here's what it looks like, right? And
Yeah.
we'd run the same kind of traffic that we would run as a deliverable to them. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, that's how we did it.
Now, were you doing any type of like you said you were doing consulting, but were you doing consulting for equity or like what did that typically look like when you say we're doing consulting? Because I feel
Yeah,
like that's a
yeah.
very
That's a
very
good one, right?
broad term. Yeah.
Yeah, so the consulting was originally healthcare consulting.
Okay.
That was flat retainer based consulting. So, $1,000, 2,000, 5,000, whatever
Yeah.
it was per month per client. Then when we started going down the marketing route, we got good at marketing our own services, but we also came across a couple other marketing companies that were helping chiropractors market and helping medical spas market. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up doing consulting for those marketing companies because we had the industry knowledge. They were very good
Okay.
at marketing, but they're like, I don't know how to teach chiropractors how to good at sales. So we
Yeah.
had some of these consulting rangers like, look, I'm a chiropractor. I've sold a bunch of chiropractic care. I think, this person needs help. And so the marketing company would retain us to help like coach or consult those people. And that was actually probably the most fun I've ever had in work because there's no expectation of any deliverable other than they get better at sales.
Yeah.
And so you could just do whatever you want in that company, right? It wasn't like I need 50 leads or 40 leads. It was like I suck at sales. I want to be better at sales. That's the mentality all these guys come from. So you take one call with them and they're like, "Thank you so much. I know exactly what to do now." It was just like a
Yeah.
very high leverage. So that was probably my favorite business to be in.
Now, when did you first find out about creative finance? Was that early on in your journey, or that was
Yeah,
something a
that's
little bit
that's
later on
interesting.
in there? Yeah.
Later. Yeah, it was later. So the first, I want to say 15, maybe 17 homes we bought, something like that, were mortgages.
Okay.
Where there was a bank statement product, I think, or maybe some of them were DSCR or bank statement products. And I think those were good products to have. One thing I learned is that interest rates are very high. We were buying
Yeah.
some stuff, rates were super low in 2020. Then as we came out of 2020, the rates started going up. So we were chasing this uphill battle, which was terrible because we started at like 4%,
Yeah.
and within 2 years we were at like 9.125 or something. It was just like very
Yeah.
big jump. And for I think for people who don't do non-qualified mortgages, they're like, there's no way it jumped 5%. I'm like, dude, if you
It
look at the
does.
non-qualified
Yeah.
mortgage, it actually jumped 5% in about 2 years. And I
Yeah.
know that wasn't as much in the primary homes, but when you're doing investment loans, they went from in 2021, I had a 4.6 with 20% down, 80% loan to value. And a year and a half later, we have a mortgage that's 9.125. It just is. I don't have to say it. And it's
And
not a credit issue. It wasn't
yeah,
like the
and
credit
sellers are
vastly
always
changed.
very, understanding and they
Yeah.
never get set on a price or anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that was the switch, right? Like that last mortgage, I think that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back was 9.12. Like there should never be a nine in front of any mortgage. And I think guys like Pace would disagree. They're just like, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is as long as it cash flows. But I'm
Yeah.
certain that almost everything in America does not cash flow at 9% plus. It just
Yes.
doesn't.
Unless you're going to get it for like $2 and then
Yeah, something
maybe,
crazy.
maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the dive, and then we went, sub two seller finance,
Okay.
wraparound mortgages, made the natural progression, and today we will still buy some stuff with bank loans, but our focus is creative finance for sure.
How much do you feel like the skills from running a business prior translated into real estate? Because it seems like to me there's definitely some overlapping pieces, but they're fundamentally different businesses from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of real estate business, right? Because like
Yeah.
I talk about this in a bunch of other content. This is how I see it. There's wholesaling, then you graduate to fix and flip, and then into buying and holding properties, and then to development. 99% of people never make it to development, just like any
Yeah.
other industry. I
Right.
think if you're wholesaling, running a business is very much like that. It's like sales, marketing. That's it.
Yeah.
Sales, marketing, and negotiating, right?
A little
That's
bit of
wholesaling.
underwriting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, right? Like, and even that, like you give some sales nut job a spreadsheet, he's good. You know what I mean? As long as he can sell, he can punch stuff into
Yeah.
into the sheet. So once you get to fix and flip, though, like you said, now we're talking like real estate, right? That's not wholesale anymore. So now I got to know how to hire people and I got to maybe fire people, but then I also have to understand real estate, and that's where the difficulty comes in, which is I've never spent any of my time in fix and flip for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Tough.
So I guess when you were initially coming out of more of the traditional employment world into entrepreneurship, like what, uh, like especially from my side, like I do some things on the side, but what pushed you over the edge to kind of go all in with it? Was there an event in your job where you're like, F this, I'm not doing
No,
this
it's
anymore?
income. It
Okay.
was just I wasn't making enough income. It was one of these things. Like I left chiropractic school. Probably I paid in Canadian dollars, but
Yeah.
school was in US dollars because it was here. And the dollar went from like 1.08 to 144
Okay.
exchange rate. So I paid like 60 grand more or something to go to school than I was expecting. And
Yeah.
that was a problem because the bank wouldn't give me, there was all these problems downstream. But basically I wasn't making enough income at the beginning to be able to like pay. And I was living in like a 1 bedroom apartment, or maybe, yeah, I think it was 1 bed, 2 bath or something like that. Or maybe it was a two, but I think it was a 1 bedroom. And it was just like, dude, this doesn't make any sense. Like I literally I can't make a mortgage, or I can't make a rent payment and
Yeah.
live and make a student loan payment. And I know Canada and the US are a little different, but in Canada, you actually have to pay your loans back. I know in the US, that's, a hotly debated topic, but
Well, yeah,
you got to pay
that
them back, right?
I don't
So,
know how
so
hotly debated that is anymore, but it seems like you
yeah,
have to pay it back.
yeah. So anyways, it's we, you know, we had a lot, like there's a lot of debt there, and so I decided, okay, I'm not going to reduce the cost. Like I can't compress the cost anymore.
Yeah.
So my only option is make more
Make more
money, and
income.
there wasn't really a path with trading time for dollars that way. I figured I had to build leverage in a team, and the online businesses are significantly easier to build leverage. $400 a month virtual assistant. You get a
Yeah.
business partner and go 50-50. Now one guy does sales, one does operations, and then you have virtual assistants. You just get crazy amount of leverage that you just can't get in a brick and mortar business.
Now I know like there's definitely the craze around people buying businesses. Like going
Mhm.
through, I know I've seen that you've even created content around that. Like what are your thoughts around buying a business versus starting one?
That's a good question. So we're piloting a new company right now where we're trying to do some of this acquisition as a service, so not coaching, but actually done for you acquisitions. And
Yeah.
that spurred off of kind of like the real estate wholesaling journey, right? Where it's like, well, if we can find a good deal and resell it, maybe we can make the spread. Same concept on the business is like, well, we know how to get the business owners, and we know most business owners who want to sell, they never make it to a broker because most
Right.
brokers are calling people very old school. So we're piloting this right now where we're going and taking on buyers as clients, not
Okay.
sellers, because sellers are typically have brokers. We take on buyers and helping them buy a business. So we're piloting that, and it's very similar to real estate. The one thing I will say is cash flow in a business is so much better, right? An average business that's $1 million business is going to cash flow about 300 grand a year or more, depending on
Okay.
what you buy it at. An average $1 million property probably only cash flows 20 grand a year,
Okay.
average as a short term rental.
So as
So
from
big
like a
difference.
structure perspective, um is it truly like wholesaling where you're locking it up under contract and then charging a fee on top of that? Or is it something that
We're
you're
trying
basically
both
saying,
models.
yeah,
Both. Yeah, like I said, we're really in pilot. Just spun up ads. We're just kind of going through the process right now. But we have some clients that have been very successful in this new model, and the new model is a flat fee with milestones to the buyer. So the buyer pays 25 grand. We charge them 10 up front, and then five, and five thousand over different milestones. Letter of intent, purchase sales agreement, close
right,
of the business, right? So it's
right.
just these kind of consulting. It's taken the consulting world and the marketing world and the business world, and I've been part of multiple exits now, so I understand the seller side and just packaging it all together. So like my day looks like real estate acquisitions, business acquisitions. Like I'm trying to do both of those because it's the same skill over and over again.
So tell me a little bit more about your exit. I know we're jumping all over the place at
Yeah,
this
yeah, no, this is
point,
good.
but
Yeah, this is good.
yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. I think you said it was a property management company. Like
Yeah,
what?
so it's co-hosting. It's
Okay.
directly short-term rental management, but it's a co-hosting company. And for people, because most people don't know the difference, property management is a single entity that has a bunch of people employed. Might have a cleaner, a grass guy, pool guy, whatever. Co-hosting is the function of helping a host. So let's say I own a property. I'm the host. You're the co-host. You do all the communication and the pricing with the guests on Airbnb, but you're not cleaning the property. You might live in Philadelphia and co-host a property in, I don't know, somewhere in Arkansas, like just
Yeah.
nowhere near, right? And so the co-host function is the thing that's generating revenue for the short-term rentals, Airbnb, VRBO, stuff like that. When we were building the portfolio, we had other people do that function for us, like third-party people we'd pay to co-host. They weren't able to scale the way that we wanted to scale. So we brought that function in-house. We built a separate company with a separate team that we could get control over because we didn't want to be a customer of a company. We wanted to make sure we're first, right?
Controlling
Like we
it.
didn't want to be just another person. So what we did is we brought it all in house for our own properties and for, I don't know, maybe 80, 90 other properties. And ultimately we did a almost a merger, but is really an acquisition. We got acquired by a group called Billick Investment Group,
Okay.
which is another co-hosting company.
Okay.
So it really is kind of like a merge, except for the reason it's an acquisition technically is because they kept their brand name and all the clients were rolled into that. So, for us, that made sense. It freed up, probably 40 hours a week of my time just on that business alone. My brother, who's running most of the day to day, freed up 40 hours of his time. And from a leverage standpoint, because that company doesn't make a ton of quote unquote money, that time is better spent elsewhere. So it wasn't so much an exit for cat. I mean, we sold it for good price and good terms. Um, but we just decided that it wasn't worth our time to make that little amount of money. So we
Right.
said it's out.
Interesting. So
Yep.
what would you say that that was generally a good experience or very painful? Like what did that, because I have my brother's father-in-law is going through some stuff with it, and it seems like a very painful process to be the seller of a business. I'm interested what that actually felt like from your perspective.
Yeah, so I've been part of multiple exits, some that are my own and some that were for clients I did consulting for. I
Okay.
think each scenario has been quite different. So I've been through a scenario where somebody bought with a SBA loan in cash, so 20% cash, 80% SBA loan. The thing that was difficult about that deal was the SBA is a pain in the butt. Any of these
Yeah.
funding groups are really, really challenging to work with, underwriting and documents, and why is this here and why is this there? So that one was a challenge there. I was involved with another consulting client that did a seller financing deal. The issue there was getting the buyer and the seller to agree on terms because the business was flat or declining a little
Right.
bit. And so the buyer's thinking, I want to discount. The seller's like, well, we better sell now because we're declining. You know what I mean? Like we're
Right.
going to be worth nothing at some point. So
Right.
you basically have, I guess what I'm saying is those were different scenarios on the co-hosting company. Um, we sold it on a rev share model
Okay.
to exit it, just because we didn't need the money today, and we're trying to get the time back, not the money. So we
Right.
exited all those contracts, those third party contracts, on terms. We sold it on creative finance terms,
Right. Right.
and for us, that made sense.
Gotcha. Um, what other exits have you, because you were talking about this one, the one with clients
Yeah,
through the SBA.
yeah,
Have you done several other creative exits in the past, or what
yes,
does
there.
that split look like, I guess?
Yeah, so I've been directly part of multiple exits, but I've also been an advisor on other exits.
Okay.
And most of the other exits, the ones that I'm not directly engaged with, are all conventional. They're like, maybe a little bit of seller finance. So like the way the SBA works, and I'm not an SBA guy, so I probably won't get it all correct, but they generally will let you have some or all of the down payment funded by the seller. So
Right.
they'll bring 80% of whatever their calculation is,
And then
but they will allow
10% is
you,
seller
yeah, it could be
finance.
10
Yeah.
seller finance, 10 in cash, it could be 20% in zero. There's a lot of structures that they allow, and that's not my specialty. But what I have seen is that the more established older businesses that are 20 plus years old, the sellers never want to use terms or very rarely want to use terms if they have a broker.
Yeah.
And the reason is the business broker gets paid 10% of the sale. And if
Okay.
the guy takes terms and gets paid over time, the broker gets paid over time. So the broker
Right.
pushes for a lower price, but upfront because they want to get paid. They're actually putting their interests above
Right.
the sellers. So you see that a lot when there's a broker involved, cash only deal, or like not creative deals,
Most. Yeah.
SBA only deals.
And do you feel like most sellers are undereducated on that process? Because it,
Yeah.
based on my discussions there, like I've seen something very similar where like the game for the broker is to get as many listings as possible and to get as
Yep.
much cash up front as they can, even
Yep.
if it's a lower sale price there. Like, tell me about what your experience has been there, because mine's very limited.
Yeah. I mean, I think exactly what you said is correct. Like the broker is primarily focused on in what they tell their seller is, hey, I'm going to get you the highest price. What they really mean is I'm going to get you the deal that has the most amount of cash at close because so I can make money as a broker. That's what they're thinking, right? It's just wrong. I don't have to say like
Yeah.
it's just not correct. And because it's not correct, it is what it is, right? Like it leads to bad deals. Now, in terms of seller financing, just like real estate, you got to educate the seller. And to get to the seller, if there's a broker, you got to go through the broker. Just like if there's an
Right.
agent, you got to go through the agent. And unfortunately, my experience has been people heavily confuse age and experience. So what do I mean? Like I get these guys on the phone that are brokers say, "Hey, I've been doing it for 20 years and I'm 50 years old." again,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean you know a specific vertical like seller financing or like any type of creative structuring, right? And so the brokers, both the agents for the real estate side and the business brokers, are very fixed in their way. That's not allowed. That's illegal. That's whatever their thing is
Right.
because they don't understand it. And so they just push back against it really, really hard. And so
And they're
I
the
think honestly it's
advisor.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like I would rather just not have an agent or not have a broker because then
Right.
it's a good conversation with the seller. And the best deals I've ever done, both in the business and the real estate side, are always buyer and seller. Just talk together. Like that intermediary is not increasing the rate at which a deal is getting done.
Yeah.
Just not.
It, do you find that most of the clients that do end up buying businesses are able to effectively run them after?
No,
So I feel
not at
like
all.
I feel like there's a ton of education around the process of actually buying and selling businesses, but I feel like most people's biggest fear is like, great, you get through the transactional side, but then what do you do the day after that? And most people have no idea how to
No
run a
idea.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say 90% of the people, this is how I look at it. If I took 10 great businesses that are, let's say, $5 million a year or more in top line and a million in EBITDA or profit, right? If I took five of those businesses in any order and gave it to any individual out there, they will burn all five of those down immediately. And the
Yeah.
reason is that it's not the business that's the problem, it's the operator or the owner. And some businesses have an operator that's separate from the owner, right? Maybe you buy the
Right.
business, but there's a full-time guy there. Those businesses generally are successful because the operator knows how to run it. But if you're like, hey, I want to buy a digital marketing company, you've never done digital marketing and there's not an operator,
Yeah.
you're in trouble. Like you're going to have some serious problems running that thing, right? And I've seen that because one of the acquisitions or dispositions, technically, because it was a sale,
Yeah.
um, company sold for, I don't know, 1.3, 1.5, something like that, probably doing $250,000 a month when it was sold in revenue, worth nothing today.
Yeah.
Zero, just in the ground. But that happens.
Where do you typically see the biggest gap in their skill set is when someone goes and acquires a business? Is it they don't know how to sell and market, they don't know how to run the back end, or it's just crappy all around?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a classic lawyer response, right? It depends, right? Or CPA
Yeah.
response. It depends. So I think that majority of businesses fail due to lack of new sales. At least the online businesses, brick and mortar, are a little different because they have established brand, Google My Business, all that kind of stuff, right? But it seems as though a lot of them die due to lack of sales, and so the business acquisitions that I've been a part of, when the new operator comes in and they're not from that space, they're from corporate America, which is where a lot of them come from because they have the money to actually buy it. They've never had to sell anything ever. So they just get absolutely taken to school on sales and basically operational expenses stay here, income's up real high, and income just starts declining until income is less than operational
Right.
expenses.
And then
And
they're
now
upside
it's try to
down.
get off the elevator as fast as possible as it's going down because that revenue's sharply declining. And when revenue's declining, now you're focused on fixing the business instead of selling
Right.
stuff, which is the thing you should have been doing in the first place.
Right.
It's a disaster when that happens. But that's literally what happens on every business.
Yeah, and that's what I've always seen around like all the education that they have is it's so focused on the actual transaction process.
Hmm.
And I think that like you said, there's a lot of people that are in corporate America that hate their jobs and they're like, oh, the antidote is to own my own business.
Yeah.
And they have it fall apart, which truthfully, like I've thought about going and buying a business, but my biggest fear is even though I work in a sales related background, is exactly that is I buy this business on terms or in cash and
Hmm.
it just implodes. So I guess like from your standpoint, going from more of a traditional job into the entrepreneurship side of things, like if you were to go back, whatever it was, 10 years or 8 years, what were the things that you wish that you would have focused on to go from corporate America into your own business, whether it be real estate or brick and mortar or digital marketing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely tax legal compliance. Those are
Okay.
big ones, right? A lot of people talk about, oh, this is boring. This and that. It's like getting the tax thing right. It's really, really important. Entity structure, the way that you have the business set up, having a good advisor you can work with, right? Legal. A lot of guys don't have attorneys till they need attorneys, and
Yeah.
that's fun when that happens, right? And then
Yeah.
compliance. There's a lot of regulatory compliance that's popping up. Real estate, wholesaling, securities. Legal, IRS, like all these different groups that regulate different things, you got to make sure you have either a team member or you understand a lot of that yourself. And I will say that a large portion of running a business is the stuff you do on the business, right? It's all the like, hey, let's make sure we renewed the LLC this year. Like the number of people
Right.
who have companies that have been expired, right? Wait till you get a lawsuit and have an expired company. That's real fun, right? When
Yeah.
it's not instated properly in an entity. That these are like real problems. It's $100 fix, but like you're not thinking
It's
about, let me make
thousands of
sure I renew.
dollars later when you have that
Exactly,
problem. Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
part of the business. It's not part of like your day to day, right? So it's little stuff like that. Or like insurance. Some guys have errors and omissions insurance, right? Some guys don't have that, and then they have a problem. They're like, oh, I wish I had it. We had a
Right.
slip and fall at one of our Airbnbs in Florida. Probably would have cost us 50, 60 grand if we didn't have it through Airbnb, and it's all
Right.
covered through air cover, which is
Right.
a non, it's not optional. You have to have it, but
Yeah.
like it's just great that it's there because that would have been a $50,000 problem for us,
Right.
maybe more, right? Who knows? So like these are the things that are not part of the business, but are around the business that are nobody talks about because it's boring, but like that actually matters. So like yes, being good at sales matters. Yes, being a good operator matters. But honestly, these other things are the things that really derail you for sure.
And I am truthfully asking, somewhat personally. So I work in tech as what's called a sales engineer for a cybersecurity company.
Hmm.
If you, with all of your knowledge and experience, kind of knowing the creative finance world, the real estate world, the business world, like if you were thinking about how do I transition out of this career because, corporate America can be pretty brutal for
Yeah, yeah.
good reason or not, like what would you advise someone like me?
Yeah, I am a big fan of goal setting. At like the end of the, it's the new year
Yeah,
now, and writing stuff down. Each year, I try to write down 10 things that I want. Some of them are money, some of them are business, some of them are personal, some of them are travel. Like I write them down, and then I try. This is really hard to do, but I try to ask myself. Like I have it in my phone on the notes tab, and I try to say, okay, is this activity or decision move me towards one of those 10 things? And if the answer is no, you don't do it. So a perfect example would be an income goal. If you make $400,000 a year and you say, I want to make $500,000 a year,
what actions do you
um,
have to take?
yeah, like what, like does leaving a job making 400 to go to start a business making 500, is that practical?
Yeah,
Right? And the answer is probably not for most people. You're probably going to take a haircut in business, but if there's a path to growing the business, you might go from making 400 to 200 for a year to
yeah,
then three, then four, then five, then six, then seven. And now you're making 1 million a year, right?
right.
But you might have to go backwards to go forward. And I think, like you said, a lot of the guys who are in corporate America think the antidote is I make 400 a year. Why can't I just buy a business that prints me 400 a year?
Yeah.
It's more advantageous. I keep more of my hard-earned money. Whatever. Like they just think the grass is greener, and then when you get there and you get your face kicked in, that's when it
Like,
gets
oh, these
tricky.
are all
So
my problems now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's no one else. You
Yeah.
can't run it up the chain. You can't send an email to some. There's
Can't
nobody
quit
to
and just
solve
go
it.
to a different company. It's
Yeah, it's
on
just not
you.
possible. So I
Yeah.
think here's how I would. I think a better question is, how do I mitigate risk if I'm going to do this? Right. So number one, as a buyer, seller finance for sure. Keep the seller in the game. Number two, if the seller's not willing to stay on for 6 to 12 months, you got the wrong guy. Don't buy that because if it starts coming down, you have somebody to hold accountable that got it to where it is. And if it's declining,
Right.
the reason they want to get out is because they don't want to be responsible for the decline. So you hold them accountable. Deal structure has to include some type of earnout, which basically just means if the company drops by X percent, they get less valuation. If you buy it at $1 million valuation, it drops 20%, you need a 200K haircut and you want it today,
So it
right?
aligns incentives.
Exactly. And then maybe a revenue share or profit share type deal. Those are the ways to line that up.
100%.
Yeah.
I
That's what I
guess
do.
would you advise more people go the say consulting for equity route or actually
No.
buying a business?
Definitely
No?
not consulting for equity. I think a lot of companies think they're more valuable than they are, especially SMBs, right? Under $10 million revenue.
Yeah.
If you're gonna take corporate America's skills and try to translate it, I saw this in COVID a lot. There were a lot of our clients that were business consultants and they got fired from their corporate job, right? And I'd say, okay, well, why are you consulting on this? Oh, well, I'm really good at this. Well, you got fired, so maybe
Maybe you
you
weren't so
aren't as
good after
good.
all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not to say that a lot of people got smoked during COVID. A lot of business had a hard time as a business owner. Like we almost got destroyed too. I mean, we were able to make it out. I'm not putting anybody down there, but taking your skills that's in a W-2 environment where you're in a cog in the wheel and taking that and being a business owner are very different. I would say a lower risk, lower reward company is probably a better fit for somebody who is a W 2. If you want to earn maybe you buy a small car wash, something that costs you 500 grand and it throws off 150 grand a year or 200
Right.
grand a year, that really doesn't require you, like actually doesn't require you. Yes, you might have some capital expense. Yes, you might lose some money on some stuff. Yes, you might screw up, but it's not requiring like your skill set like a digital marketing
Right.
company might. Okay. That's how I diversify that. So you do seller financing, you have a hard asset that backs it, like the car wash, and you buy something that really doesn't require a lot of intelligence or innovation to do better.
Right.
That would help.
I guess from the type of businesses that you recommend someone that's transitioning out of corporate America, would you recommend the Cody Sanchez method of car washes, laundromats, and stuff like that, or the Carl Allen style of let's go after a bigger business that has more overhead, but certainly more upside to it?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you are, right? They're
Yeah.
like we were saying before, if you're a great sales talent, you've always been good at sales and you can plug yourself into any product and be good at sales, you can probably jump for a bigger business that requires sales. You don't have to sell people on a car wash. Like people have an
Right.
inherent need for a car wash. It's more of a commodity business. If you want to go buy a sick roofing company that's 30 years old that, is very flat and just kind of boring, maybe what you can do is you can plug in your marketing systems and take it from 5 million to 10 million or 5 million to
Yeah.
7 million. Like it depends on your skills, right? And at the end of the day, if you if you're used to playing it safe because you have a job, right? And when I say playing it safe, like you get the paycheck kind of no
Yeah.
matter what. I would start with a smaller business that's more risk mitigated, unless you're willing to lose it all, in which case you
Right.
can go bigger, right? I'm working with two clients right now that make good money, five, six, $700,000 a year each, and they're looking to buy a business, and they are willing to lose it all, right? They are willing to put it on the line, and
Yeah.
so they might be a good fit for buying a three, four, five, $6 million company and might take a haircut on some stuff, right?
Right.
That's not everybody. These guys are cut differently. There's just guys like that. So I would say for the average person buying a $250,000 a year cash flow business and keeping their job at the same time, that is probably the sweet spot for most people.
Okay.
Then you can decide after 12 months, hey, are you actually good at running this thing or do you need to install an operator? You won't make 250 anymore, maybe you only make 200, but you still have your job, your primary source of income, and this is
Right.
this is more of a passive income, passive operation. And when I say passive, you're still going to do work, but maybe you only make 100 grand a year instead of 250 a year, but
Right.
you still get to keep your job. That's
Right.
probably a safe way to do it. Now, I will say just be careful because at some point you're going to have to jump all in or not. Like you're not going to be able to do both of those things for 10 years. It's just probably not going to
Right.
happen.
What
Yeah.
are your thoughts around kind of the longer term outlook for most people that buy businesses when it comes to doing like roll ups? Do you see that that's actually common, or most people buy one business and they're like, "F this, I don't want to keep going
Yeah,
on with
yeah,
it."
yeah, definitely number two. I
Yeah,
would say that 100% of the people that buy a business think they're going to be part of some roll up or acquisition or merger, and very few of them actually are. I have some very talented friends that have been parts of roll ups, small P acquisitions, especially in the home services space.
yeah,
They're really smart people, right? They're very smart people. They're not your average operator that just showed up out of corporate America and just did that. They've ran five companies. They've lost $1 million. They've whatever it is. You know what I mean? They've been through it. So I think, yeah, most people are delusional when they come in on the front end. They have no idea and they think they're going to get a roll up and that's never going to happen. So I think the
yeah,
goal for a new business is better type of income, right? The income is handled, treated differently, it's taxed differently, it's used differently, more deductions, which is
right,
awesome because you can run your life that way. And on top of that, you also get control time wise. That's why somebody should buy a business. That's why somebody should start one of those or start or buy one of those businesses. I wouldn't try to be a PE roll up. That's very unreasonable for most people.
um, so I have the limited version of Zoom here, so we have less
Yeah, it's
than
all good.
5 minutes left
Yeah, all
on
good.
there. So where can people find you from a socials perspective, and what should they be coming to you for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything particular like to sell anymore
Yeah,
because I've retracted. I mean, if people want to follow me, You can look me up, Creative Acquisitions on Instagram. That's probably where I post most of my stuff right now, and I post a mix of business and real estate stuff and broad content. I will say if somebody wants to learn, you could watch that. I don't really have anything to sell, although we do have services. I think the only other thing is, my piece of advice would be watch other people, find people online that you like, even if they're, there's a lot of influencer type people, but there's people with good ideas. Go watch stuff. Go watch YouTube. Go look at stuff on LinkedIn. Go watch Instagram. There's smart people out there that can show you what you want to do. And dude, pay money to work with somebody. And if you can work with them one on one, that's even better than a group. Please pay money. If that means you got to spend 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 grand, whatever it is, pay people that know what they're doing so that you can save yourself a bunch of time. That will be well
And
worth it
heartache later.
down the
Yeah.
road. Okay. That pay people to help. That's my biggest piece of advice.
Awesome. Well, Connor, I appreciate you jumping on here and
Yeah. Thanks, man.
let me know if there's anything else I can do from my side there.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I'll see you coming up. See you, Connor. Thanks, Ben.